All right, so here we have the front brake system. You can see the pad is worn. So for the pad, recommended replacement when the friction material is the same size as the backing plate. That is when it is the 20% left of your brakes and it's time to do brakes. So to do the brakes, we're gonna have to remove the brake caliper and mounting bracket. Now we're going to push back the piston. Now the brake fluid, this is the lowest point in the system, so all the trash is going to go down. So what we're going to do is we have a rubber hose here. We'll use a clamping tool on the hose. We'll open the bleeder valve. We'll push all of the bad fluid out. So then we'll put the new pads in and then put it back together. But that will get rid of all of the debris. We're not pushing back all the trash back into the system. We're starting with new fluid from top going down to the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the caliper and the mounting bracket. And then we'll move on to the rotor. All right, so here we have the caliper. Now these are the two bolts for the caliper. This is so the caliper can slide on the mounting bracket. So to remove the caliper, we have two bolts, upper and lower, and then we have the bolts for the mounting bracket. And this is going to be the bleeder screw for the fluid right here on the top. So first we're going to remove the caliper bolts. These are going to be 12 millimeter on this vehicle. One of the things we want to make sure is that our slides are sliding. If we had any irregular pad wear where the front pad or the back pad has a different wear, that would be because these slides are not free. All right, so there we have the brake caliper. We don't want to let it hang. We kind of want to support it somehow or hang it with a clothes hanger or something. So here we have the pads. The pads have some springs on them. These are to help release after the stop is done. So we want to remove all this. All right, so there we have the remainder of the pad versus the backing plate. So we were almost metal to metal there. You do want to note when we took that pad off, this is the squealer on the top. So when we put the new pads on, we want to identify the squealer to the top on the inner pad there. We did not have one on the outer pad. All right, so to remove the bracket, we have these two 17 millimeters here. All right, so there we have the mounting bracket removed. So now we'll come around to the front and we'll remove the rotor. All right, so here we have the rotor. We're held on by two screws. So we're going to have to remove these two screws to be able to get the rotor. You will notice there is two other threaded screws. So once those are removed, this other one here, so if you were to have a bolt to fit, you could rotate back and forth and it will pull the rotor off that way if it's rusted and it's a pressed fit. We're replacing the rotor, so we're going to do it a little bit of a different way where we're not concerned about the rotor. But we'll go ahead and take these screws out. Now these are very tight What we're going to use here, this is an impacting screwdriver. So as we hit it, it is going to twist. So we want to put it in there, set it for the unlock twist. And then we're going to break the tip off right inside of it. We'll try that again here when we get some another tool.
That's great.
All right, so we broke the tip off. We've tried to chisel it out. We tried to drill the center of it out. It's a hardened metal. It's not happening. So basically, these two bolts here are what hold the rotor on as the vehicle goes down the assembly line until everything else. Once the caliper and everything on and the wheel is, the rotor is secured to it. So these are just for assembly line purposes. We're going to try to take this one out. Hopefully we have better luck with that one. We're going to have to remove this one to get the rotor off. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the cutoff wheel. Because we're not saving the rotor, we're going to replace the rotor. We're going to put a cut in it sideways so that we could put a flathead screwdriver. And the hope is that the heat from cutting it is going to break the bond, similar to like if you were going to use torches or something like that. It'll be a localized heat on that bolt. So we'll try to take this one off, and then we will grind this one next after that. So let's cross our fingers here. Okay, and that is how the tool's supposed to work. All right, so we have the one removed. Now we'll start cutting on that one. Crazy. All right, there we have the rotor removed. Whew, how's that for fun? Okay. All right, so now we want to go ahead and push the caliper back. So what we're going to use is this is to press the caliper. We're going to put the brake pads back in. We're going to loosen the bleeder. We're going to loosen the bleeder and push all of the fluid that's the old bottom of the... All right. Let's go ahead and get everything loose. So if that was tight, you know, we could always mount everything back up, have it sitting in here so we don't have to hold it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and clamp off. This will keep the fluid from pushing backwards. All right, so we have the bleeder open. Now we're going to push back the caliper. All right, so now we have the caliper pushed back. I'm going to go ahead and tighten the bleeder back up. Once we're done here, we're going to do a little bit of a gravity bleed, just to ensure there's no air bubbles left. So we'll go ahead and tighten up the bleeder, undo the line. All right, so now we're ready to put the rotor and the caliper back on with the new pads. All right, so before we replace the rotor, like when we were fighting, we had a little bit of rust here holding us on. Now this is the mounting surface. So if there's any rust or if it's uneven, you know, from the rust, when that rotor goes on, it will wobble. That's going to be a complaint with the braking system. So we're going to go ahead and use a roll lock wheel, and we're just going to clean off a little bit there. We do look pretty good. We wouldn't have any problem remounting this, but we're just going to go ahead and freshen it up, clean it. The same with the rotor. Here we have rotor from Auto Parts Direct U. Before we put this rotor on, we're going to clean everything with brake clean. We'll clean this, we'll clean that. There is an anti-rust coating that is on these when they come, so we want to make sure that we get that off so it's not in our new brake pad causing a squeal. So we'll get to cleaning everything now. So we're using a brake clean. This is going to clean everything without leaving a residue. All right, so you can see where our alignments for those bolts were that we took out. So we want to make sure that they're in those spots. Maybe. So even though that bolt is what it is, we'll just put it back in there. It's not, it doesn't do anything. We're not raised above, we won't interfere with anything, but it is back in place. All right, so we'll go ahead and mount up the caliper. mounting bracket. Now you want to go in and clean these off too, so we'll use that wire brush. You can tell this thing is pretty dirty, but we want to make sure we clean our pads here. All right, so here we have our new hardware. So these should all be the same for left and right. They are. Okay, so we're going to remove the old one. Now if we had problems here, we would want to address that. These are the slides. They should feel nice and free. If they're not, you'll have to remove all these, clean the pins, clean out inside, re-lube everything, put it back together. But these slide pretty good, so that's not a concern for us. All right, so we'll go ahead and put the new slides. All right, so we're ready to put the mounting bracket in. All right, so when we put in our new pads, we do want to remember we had the squealer. So what this is going to do is this is going to tell you when the pad is at minimum thickness. That's going to be touching the rotor, and you're going to hear a squeal that goes away when you touch the brakes, but is there when you're rolling. So remember, this was upwards on the inner pad, so we're going to put the new part in the same way. All right, so we have our pads in now. Now the old pads had anti-squealers on them. And that would go here. Same with the inner. So these are going to keep the noise down. The other thing we have to install is our springs. We're going to put our springs back in, so we have two holes at the top. So we're going to have to, as we put them in, we're going to have to hold the pad so it does not push it back out. So I have the pad held. All right, you can see the spring pressure is pretty good. All right, so we want to put the caliper back on. Now we want to make sure that the caliper, that the hose is not crimped in any way. We didn't rotate the caliper. We don't have any kinks, loops, or anything in the brake hose. So these pins do have a flat spot. They will line up. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and tighten this side up. We'll go to the other side. We'll do the exact same thing. All right, so now we have everything mounted up. Now we're just going to go and do a gravity bleed. All right, so you can see here he was low on the brake fluid. Now if we would have pushed the calipers back, you know, we would have got there's how much fluid we pulled out. So he obviously has had to add brake fluid to his system. But we would have pushed it, we would have been overflowing. All this garbage fluid would have been back through the system. So that's why we opted, you know, this is the correct way to do the brake job to not interrupt any of the ABS actuators and stuff. So we're going to go ahead and remove this. All right, so we're going to gravity bleed this system. So we'll go ahead and fill the reservoir up. Then we're going to go back down to the rotor, to the caliper there, and we're going to open up the bleeder screw. So basically any air that we got into the system, the weight of the fluid will push that air out. We want a nice drip coming out of the caliper. We'll see the level go down a little bit, and then we'll tighten up the bottoms, and that will be a gravity bleed. That is, you know, just shy of doing a pressure pump bleed. Takes two people. This is like a one-man show. So filled up, loosened, let it drip down, watch your level drop, make sure you're not seeing any air bubbles popping out, and then proceed. Now this is only going to take a few minutes because we may only have a little bit. If you were doing a whole system with the rear also open, you know, it's going to take a lot longer for that to gravity bleed through. It may take you up to 10 minutes or so before you have nice streams of fluid flowing out. So we'll go ahead and open the caliper bleeders up now, and we'll let it gravity bleed. Okay, so if we would have had the system open longer, or if we would have done hoses or replaced the whole caliper, we would have seen a little bit more air dripping out. So right now we're just kind of looking. We'll start to build a puddle on the ground there as we gravity feed through. All right, so between the both front caliper bleeders open, we've only been doing it about 30 seconds or so. We've already lost about an eighth of an inch of level in our reservoir. So we're doing pretty good. We could go ahead and tighten up and proceed with putting the tires on and getting the brakes up to par before we back out. I'll go ahead and put the dust cover back on. Now we're going to clean off with brake clean all the brake fluid. Brake fluid, very corrosive, pulls the moisture out of stuff, can promote rusting. So we just want to make sure it's all clean there. All right, so you can see the fluid has gone down from our gravity bleed. So the one important last step to do is we want to push the brake pedal a couple times. That's going to take the caliper and push it and actually engage the pad to the rotor. If you do not do this step now, once you put the vehicle in drive and you start rolling, you will be doing some emergency pumps to stop the vehicle, because the brakes will not work until they are clearance there to get to it. So we're going to go ahead and pump the brake. You'll actually see the fluid level go down a little bit. Just a slow movement to the floor until you feel it's going to. So the first pump, it's going to be real easy. That's going to take in. You see, you just took in a bunch of fluid. So now we're pushing the piston out, and we're engaging that front brake. All right, so now we have started engaging the. So now we have some pressure. So we'll go ahead and top it off. We're just below our maximum level, so we'll adjust that. Okay, so go ahead and put the cap on. Now we're ready to put the tires on, and we've completed this job.